Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Utah Cultural Sector Call. We will begin in just a few minutes and give everyone a chance to log in. All right, everyone. Hello, welcome to the Utah Cultural Sector Call. It is exactly 3:30, so we'll get started. Okay, so we're very excited for today's Cultural Sector Call. Thank you so much for joining us and logging in. This month, we will be joined by the Cultural Caucus chairs from the Utah State Legislature to hear their insights regarding legislation that will affect the cultural sector. And that will be run by Crystal Young Otterstrom. And then we will hear about tax implications of the CARES Act funding by Tori Piestro and her associate. Closed captioning is available and can be accessed by clicking on the closed caption button below and then choosing subtitles. Throughout the call, please feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen as well to submit your questions. And of course, we would always love to thank our partners who put these calls together: the Utah Department of Heritage and Arts, Utah Division of Arts and Museums, Utah Cultural Alliance, Utah Humanities, Utah Museums Association, and the local art agencies from all across the state. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Crystal.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, Emily. Well, things are always moving up here at the legislature, and pretty much all of our cultural caucus chairs have bills in committee this afternoon. So what we did is we recorded everybody earlier to talk about their priorities, and so you'll still get to hear from everybody. So first, I'd like to thank our four cultural caucus chairs, who are Senator Kurt Coleman in the Senate, Senator Lucas Camilla, also in the Senate, our Republican and Democratic chairs respectively, and then Representative Snow and Representative Waite, who are our Republican and Democratic chairs in the House. And so before I turn the time over to them, we want to share some data. We're all about data here. Next slide, please. Did we skip a couple with the numbers? Go back a little more. Almost. There we go. Thank you. All right. So since the beginning of the pandemic, our good friends at Department of Heritage and Arts, Utah Arts and Museums, Utah Museums Association, Utah Humanities, and all of our local arts agencies, in conjunction with all of us at UCA, we've worked together to collect data on COVID's impact since the pandemic hit us in March. And we crunched the data, those of us here at UCA, with input from the Kem Gardner Institute. And so you've all felt this impact yourself, I'm sure, but just so you know the numbers that we're at, over $76 million in loss. This is a combination of what was reported in the economic impact survey that we all did together, as well as the Create in Utah and Shop in Utah applications processed by Governor's Office of Economic Development, and then the wonderful team at Utah Division of Arts and Museums. And then another big number that really communicates the need is ticket rollover from 2019 and early 2020, meaning tickets that were sold then that get held over so that when events open up more, they have to seat these tickets before they can even sell more revenue is over $17 million. And that's only from 66 organizations. So we know that the need is still great. And then the next slide, please, is the job loss. So the first number, the 3,300, indicates W-2 losses for the industry and occupation codes that are part of the cultural industry. And then the second number, we worked with our colleagues at Kim Garner Policy Institute to get to this number. So this represents 85% of the creative workforce, which is 1099 or gig workers. And that number is huge, astronomical, 22,000. So we're looking at a significant number of jobs. So the next slide, thank you. So the legislature really stepped up last year and invested $29.75 million, which is kind of arguable if it's the second or third largest investment by a state government with CARES Act dollars in this industry, but it's pretty much tied for second/third place. So, but as you all know, and as the numbers indicate, the need is still great. Next slide. All right, so now we're going to hear from our cultural caucus chairs. And first up is Representative Waite, who will talk about the Arts and Museum Sustainability Grants. And she is a member of the BEATLE Committee, or Business Economic Development and Labor Appropriations Subcommittee, which hears this request.
Hi, I'm Representative Elizabeth Waite. I represent the people in the north area of West Valley City District 31. So I'm going to tell you why I think arts is important and the arts industry is important in Utah. I grew up in Utah. I'm sixth generation, and I grew up at a time when it was just part of the day to practice piano or practice an instrument. It was part of going to school to have art and music education as part of the day. It was just an expected part of growing up in this state. And I've watched that gradually become more and more an area of privilege and yet an area of need for all of our kids. So I'm an educator, and I have seen the effect of the decline of arts education for our young kids affect the brain chemistry, and it affects people's ability to learn and practice language and math and science. So I've seen that decline and the effect. I also have been a professional musician for a short time, but I learned in that area the importance of supporting the artists, the musicians, and performers in our state because they're so much a part of how we identify our state, ourselves in the state, our heritage. I see that starting to decline also a little bit. I'm concerned. I'm really concerned because I think people don't realize how much is part of Utah and that it's actually starting to kind of fade away or become part of privilege in our state. So it's really critical to me to sustain, support, and develop and grow the industry and awareness of arts and the art culture and how valuable it is intrinsically, economically, for the identity of our state. I'm just going to take a look at my notes, and I need to run in and vote on the House floor. So I'm going to be gone for just a second because I have to go vote on this bill and come back and talk about BEATLE.
Sounds great.
Okay, so I'm back from the House vote. I wanted to explain a shift that has happened in the Appropriations Committee in which I serve, the Business, Economic Development, and Labor Committee. The committee in the last 2 or 3 years has gone through this incredible and wonderful process to dedicate a bunch of money for grants to be determined by the Humanities and Arts Department. That means that there are highly trained experts, professionals who have the time and appropriate criteria that is not politicized to determine recipients for money from the state of Utah to grow and nurture in art initiatives, in art programs. It took a while to convince legislators that they could turn the money over because they kept thinking that it was their responsibility. And I really appreciate their accepting that it's our responsibility as lawmakers to let really skilled experts in the field of art to make the decisions about those processes. And again, it takes the political elements out. So let's see, I'm just looking at my notes. About my fellow Beagle committee supports cultural industry. I think that some of them really struggle because they don't necessarily see that connection between economics and our art identity in this state. I see that because I've experienced it, and again, I've experienced the decline of that. So I speak a lot to the value of how other people see our state in terms of art, art education, art as part of our culture, piano, even the fact that we have more pianos per capita than any other place in the country. And people don't understand that. They don't understand what it means as an identity and what it does to attract people to the state and provide an economic basis when we employ professional musicians and professional artists, dancers and other performing artists, as well as writers and people who don't do those active physical performances that we usually think. And let me see, I'm looking at the next screen. Oh, and I talk a little bit about a bill that I have that's coming up in a committee today.
Thanks. We're going to save that bill for a minute. All right. And that video does show sort of the chaos that happens up here on the Hill where she had to run out a couple of times and vote. And there were other sounds in the background. But the next legislator to speak is Senator Kurt Coleman, who is the Senate Majority Whip, Assistant Majority Whip in the Senate. And he'll talk a little bit about why culture matters to him. And he's going to talk about emergency, COVID emergency relief funding for this industry.
I am Kurt Coleman, State Senator for District 9, which is mostly sandy and a little bit of
Ruth, you want to exit out and start that again?
Yep, just 1 second.
I am Kurt Coleman, State Senator for District 9, which is mostly sandy. I am Kurt. Coleman, State Senator for District 9, which is I am Kurt Coleman, State Senator for District.
Uh-oh.
I am my day job as a state senator for District 9.
Okay.
Which is mostly sandy. I am Kurt Coleman, State Senator for.
Okay, all of our troubleshooting didn't solve this problem. Just a second.
District 9, which my day job is mostly sandy music. Prior to becoming an attorney, music I was primarily a musician.
Okay, let's try going to the next page and coming back.
Lost music, And now my kids are heavily involved in the several years before deciding. I am Kurt Coleman, state senator. And now my kids are heavily involved in.
Okay, I'm gonna try one more thing.
I can just talk through it while you troubleshoot it. Does that sound good, Ruth?
Perfect.
All right. So the next little bit that Senator Coleman talks about is he first started with the personal story of he is a musician and even did it professionally and taught for a few years before going to law school and continuing his career in law. And he really cares about this industry. And so he presented both an RFA, request for appropriation, and he's sponsoring a bill from GoEd that addresses economic relief. And we're working together with him on that bill. We are team players with all the other industries. And so this is probably going to be a bill that addresses all businesses that are hurting right now. But the RFA that he presented was for $25 million. In the video that hopefully we can get working, and if not, it's all right. His bill is currently at $20 million, but could end up being higher, and there could end up being another round of emergency relief once the feds figure out what they're doing for the states. But it's looking pretty likely every day that the states are going to be getting more money from the feds. And I think I neglected to mention earlier when we talked about the $6 million for arts and sustainability grants that the Beadle Committee, Business Economic Development and Labor Appropriations Subcommittee will be announcing their priorities tomorrow morning. Do you want to give that another go, Ruth?
Sure.
I am Kurt Coleman, state senator for District 9, which is mostly Sandy, a little bit of Cottonwood Heights.
Okay. Well, why don't you talk about that one, and then we'll hope for better luck on the next one.
Great. And so, like I said before, currently it's a single industry bill coming out of GoEd. It's likely going to have some waves of priority, kind of similar to the shuttered venue operators grant coming out soon from SBA, where the first amount of funding will be available to businesses. Right now they're talking about 90% loss and then 70% loss, and then everybody else, just like the shuttered venues grant. So we'll see what happens with that, but he very much cares about our industry. So we will for sure be part of whatever it ends up being. Do you want to try the next video, Ruth, or do you want me to keep going?
Let's try talking about the 3 programs.
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for the invitation to speak to you today. Hello. My name is thank you for the invitation to speak to you today. My name is Representative Larry Washington County.
Sorry, it was doing so well and I screwed it up. Let me share it from the original video.
And we can always share these
Thank you for the invitation to speak to
separately on the website as well.
Larry Snow. I represent citizens in Washington County in District 74. I've been affiliated with the arts program here on the Capitol Hill for a number of years. And one of the reasons I like my work in supporting the arts is because I understand how important it is, especially to the education of our children. We all talk about the pandemic and what we've been through, but I've said to many people that without art education supplementing the more academic programs of our school, I think our children would be hurting more. So I want to continue to support the arts program, particularly as it relates to our children in schools. And with that, I'd like to highlight a couple of 2 or 3 programs that I'm working on making sure that we have appropriations in place to support our children. These have been going on for a period of time. It's important that we continue them because we know of their value. The first one I want to talk to you a little bit about is the Beverly Taylor Sorensen grant that puts money into our K through, I think, 6th grade, our elementary grades. We used to think historically a number of years ago that maybe we didn't need to invest in our elementary kids, but it turns out that in many ways they benefit the most because the enhancement they receive in their education and the addition of the arts actually carries over and helps them in their academic areas as well. We're looking for $4 million of state ongoing to help supplement that program. And want you to know that I support that. And I've been speaking with my colleagues on appropriations, asking them to support it as well. A couple of other programs that are equally important. The one that I think all of you know we refer to as the POPS program. We're looking for $200,000 additional ongoing there. And everything that I said about why we support the Beverly Sorensen Taylor Foundation applies to this as well. Except that in the POPS program, we get the opportunity, these young people, it extends beyond elementary, and they have the opportunity to see firsthand folks that come into the school and introduce them to the arts. And it's been my experience in working with my wife, who works in the arts for many years, that music and arts is one of those things that we get in school that lasts a lifetime. It's not just once we get our high school degree or college, we forget about it. Arts carries over from generation to generation. And the other program is the IC program, which is interesting because it brings in the science aspect of this as well. We support that program as well. And I likewise have been working my colleagues on appropriations as well. 200,000 ongoing and 225,000 one time to support what we're trying to do in anchoring some programs up in Weber County, I believe. So thank you again for allowing me to pitch these programs and let you know how much I support the arts as part of our education curriculum for our young people. Truly makes a difference, and it's worth our state's investment. Thank you very much.
Great. All right. Next up is Senator Lucas Camilla talking about the film incentives.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Senator Lucas Camilla, and I represent Senate District 1. I'm also excited to participate of this meeting. I'm sorry I couldn't be in person, but we're in the middle of committee hearings, but always a pleasure to join my other co-chairs of very important issues related to culture and arts in our state. I want to emphasize today on our $25 million ongoing film incentive request. Critical part of our economy is obviously our film programs, and how much it brings to our state in terms of the economy is very important. As you all know, and I'm obviously preaching to the choir, but cultural industry matters deeply, not only to the state in terms of the economy, but it also is part of who we are as a state. It's very much, I think, reflects Utah. We love our different cultures and how we embrace them in different ways. The film incentive program brings film productions to Utah. And as you know, the beauty of our state is one of the many pieces that attracts film productions to our state, but also our great quality of employees and labor that we can find here in the state. For every $1 million we spend in film incentives, we have 830 Utahns that are employed. So there's this direct correlation to our economy, not only from getting those films to come to Utah, but also the people in our state that are employed. And that obviously helps our economy. For every $1 we spend in film incentives, there's $14.20 that is pushed back into our Utah economy. So our ROI, or return on investment, is very high. So it's a very fiscally responsible way of investing our money, is putting it in our film incentive programs. The more film incentives money that we have, the more productions that are going to be filmed in our state. That brings not only jobs, but it brings also more people spending money in our state, and we like that. And not only happens
my name is
in the
Senator
Wasatch
Lucas
Front,
Camilla,
the
and I
beauty about
represent
film,
Senate
film
District
incentive
1.
program.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Pretty much done.
She covered it pretty well. Okay, next slide is me talking about the Main Street program. Let me start my video again so you can see me. So the Utah Governor's Office of Economic Development is hoping to bring the Main Street pilot program back to Utah this session. It's focused on rural communities, and this community-led program will bring numerous state agencies together, including Department of State History, to address economic vitality through historic preservation. And so the request is $500,000 that essentially provides seed money for participating rural communities to be able to put together plans for downtown regeneration through preservation. The sponsor is Representative Owens. Senator Owens. He recently changed chambers. He's now in the Senate. The additional appropriations before we dive into the bills are, there is an ongoing position request for a women's history position, which will continue the good work of Better Days 2020, as well as adding 2 new positions at Multicultural Affairs, who is doing such wonderful work and is completely overwhelmed with all of the requests they have in state government. And so this will help a lot, and they need to continue to grow. The additional building block requests are restoring the 5% cut made last year during the COVID cuts to the Heritage and Arts budget, $175,000 one time, which was also part of the COVID cuts, to install the Martha Hughes Cannon statue in DC. And then $15,000 ongoing plus a $15,000 one time in fiscal year 21 for the art collection storage. Now, as you all know, the current storage is not earthquake or moisture proof, and the collection is therefore in danger. So now we're going to talk about bills, and let's try to give it a go to see if the video works for Senate Bill 88.
So Senate Bill 88, local.
Nope.
Okay. So just 1 second, I'll pull up the audio so we can listen to the audio.
Should we give it a go again?
Yeah.
Okay, you're good.
Still edit the stuff and start. Option sales tax distribution. It deals with the distribution of RAP taxes for counties of the first class. So that only pertains in Utah to Salt Lake County. So we're talking about the ZAP tax. Otherwise, funding for RAP taxes in other counties or municipalities are just dealt with by their respective legislative bodies. So of course, we all care about parity of the distribution of this ZAP tax, but it's not always a simple solution. You guys will know this better than most, but the question is complicated because, one, you can't just look at the mailing address of a particular organization and determine that that's absolutely where their services are provided. You know, we have some organizations that have a mailing address in Salt Lake, but maybe a lot of their performances are elsewhere. ODT, for example, they get their mail in Sandy, but they perform primarily in Salt Lake City or even in West Valley, sometimes also in Tuacahn down in St. George. So that by itself complicates things. Second off, the audiences are from all over the county, you know, and I know with my kids, when we want to participate in string programs and stuff like that, we're traveling all over the county, and you know, we're not just sitting in Sandy where we live. And so, you know, the parity and distribution across the county doesn't always make sense because people are willing to drive and people understand that certain art organizations are in different parts of the county and people are willing to travel and to go to that stuff. So the third issue is sometimes the stuff just doesn't exist. You know, the southwest part of Salt Lake County is relatively new and developing, and sometimes it takes a minute for art organizations to really establish themselves in the new areas. And so just consequently, there's going to be more art areas in the more established parts of the valley. And so that makes it a little bit difficult. Finally, the system of audits and financial reviews required to protect taxpayer dollars means that small organizations oftentimes don't have the resources they need to qualify for more funding. With that said, though, the county council and staff are working to address these issues and make sure that any up and coming organizations and new organizations are positively impacted by this. So with the help of Utah Cultural Alliance, as well as Salt Lake County, we were able to get some edits in the bill in the second substitute, which made only minor changes to the ZAP tax. And so it could have been very detrimental the way it was originally drafted. But we think that the fixes are going to help. Basically what it says is that tier 1 groups, they just need to demonstrate that they have a regional draw, which is going to be obvious for like the symphony, Hale Center Theater, the ballet and the opera and all of that. Those obviously have bigger draws than just Salt Lake County. And then that the tier 2 funding must be in communities around the county. So that's the only requirement now, without dictating a specific formula as to how that gets distributed. So this bill has now passed the House, or I'm sorry, it's passed the Senate, it's moving on to the House. In addition to the bill, the new Salt Lake County Council has unanimously approved a list of recommendations to address this geographic parity. Some of those things including establishing a policy to ensure that each planning area and council district receives at least 5% of the ZAP tier 2 allotments. And that's been a long-term goal of UCA, and so we're getting that done. And then the county will also look at other programs and to help these new and upcoming organizations get to higher levels of funding so they can qualify more easily for the tier 2 distributions. So with that, we're supportive of SB 88 now, and we'll watch its progress.
Great, and we really need to thank Senator Fillmore for working with everybody on that bill, because he did great work listening to all of the. All right, the next bill is House Bill 242 that is actually sponsored. The House sponsor is Representative Snow himself, and we're presenting it today in committee in about an hour. And let's hear him present the bill.
I'd like to visit with you about another piece of legislation that I'm running. The arts in Utah, and actually protecting the arts, and especially the consumers that that engage in attending our art performances, live performances. The bill is House Bill 242. It's titled Ticket Reseller Amendments, and it was run at the request of Utah Cultural Arts and other art organizations up and down the state that that offer tickets to the public for their performances. Utah is known for its attendance at art productions, at cultural events, and I think we lead the nation in our interest. But it's important in that process, especially with advanced technology, that we protect the consumers, especially when tickets for some productions are incredibly expensive. We want them to have confidence that when they purchase tickets from third-party resellers, that they're getting what they're paying for. And unfortunately, in our state, we've had some experiences where people have paid a lot of money for some productions, only to find out that the tickets were fake or false, or that the seating was other than what was represented to them. So what this bill does is offer protections to the consumer. Essentially, that's it. That requires the seller to make absolutely correct representations about the product they're selling, and such that the consumer can rely on them, that when they're putting out this kind of money for themselves and their family to attend, that they're getting what the benefit of their bargain, as we say in the law. This does not preclude or prohibit major resellers in the industry. You've heard of Ticketmasters and StubHub, for example. There's nothing in this that prohibits them or restricts them from doing their business. This is more directed to those that are scamming the public, who buy up tickets and then resell them, or some cases don't even buy the tickets, but represent that they have them, and they defraud the consumer. So I hope you'll look for the bill. I hope you'll support it, because ultimately, in supporting this legislation, you support the arts in Utah. Thanks for listening.
All right, thank you, Representative Snow. In the interest of time, we'll email out the other videos, and I will just quickly go through the rest of the bills. So House Bill 38, School Technology Amendments, comes from Representative Singh-Miller. Our friends at the Utah Library Association have a few concerns with this bill and have suggested some amendments that Representative Singh-Miller is working with us on. But essentially, this bill seeks to further protect children from the possibility of maybe running across porn when they're using computers at a school library, which are already heavily protected for children. And so we're just working on a couple of small amendments there to manage, kind of match the reality of what's actually happening in school libraries. The next slide, is House Bill 313. And this is sponsored by Representative Winder, is the floor sponsor. As we probably all know, heritage can be a bit of a problematic word. And this name change has been talked about for quite a while, and the Governor's Transition Committee also addressed the need for name change. And so that name will be Department of Cultural and Community Engagement. We're really excited about this new name and excited to support this bill and get it across the finish line. The next slides are two related bills, Senate Bill 10 and HCR 3. And they, one is about place names that maybe are borrowing names or nicknames from various cultures, as well as the second bill, HCR 3, recommends that if schools choose to use Native American mascots as part of their school, that they then step up to do education of Native American cultures for their students. And I do recommend that you go watch the video when we email it out, because Representative White has some pretty interesting statistics that she shares as part of that bill. You can watch all of the bills and all of the appropriations we are tracking on the website I'm about to put in the chat. And there is, oh, I should talk about that bill. Thank you, Ruth. There is an app where you can see their current status at all times as well. And that link gives the instructions for how to do it. House Bill 120, unemployment insurance amendments. We worked with Representative Daley Provo on this bill. It actually just squeaked through the House only by 8 votes, kind of surprisingly. What you may not know, and why I want to educate you guys on this bill, is nonprofits with less than 4 employees, so 3, 2, or 1 full-time employees, do not pay into unemployment insurance. And if you are an employee at such a nonprofit and you are furloughed or laid off, you are not eligible for receiving unemployment insurance. And not everybody knows that. And so what this bill would do is require such nonprofits to notify their employees, both prospective and permanent employees, that they are not eligible for unemployment insurance if they were to be furloughed or unemployed. So that's all the bills. And I will take questions now if you have any questions about the legislative session, although I don't see any in the Q&A. Things move a million miles an hour up here. So what we say today could be wrong information tomorrow, but that's what we do here, is try to keep you up and informed. Don't see any questions.
Thank you so much, Crystal.
Thank
While
you.
we give people a chance to type their questions in, we will move on to the next part of our program. We'd like to introduce, I'm so sorry that I mispronounced your name earlier, Tori. Tori Potestio, who is the managing partner at Sorensen, Vance and Company PC, and Mike Renza, the secretary treasurer of Sorensen, Vance and Company PC. And they are going to talk to us a little bit about tax implications of CARES relief funds. Take it away, Tori.
All right, thank you. Kirsten talked to me about talking about how to record the CARES funding as well. So I'm just going to touch that a little bit. There is some confusion about that because it's so new and practice is still developing. So there is ambiguity and diversity in practice, of course. But first, let's just talk about the economic injury disaster loans and emergency grants. I think those are pretty clear that the EIDL loans are loans. And so they should be paid back and recorded as debt. As far as the emergency grants that are up to $10,000, since it doesn't have to be repaid, even if the idle application is denied, they can be reported directly as grants. So I think the confusion happens to be regarding the Paycheck Protection Program loans. And I researched several places, and not surprisingly, I found different ways to record those. One of them is to follow the revenue recognition for not-for-profit entities and just record it as a contribution. And then based on the entity's contribution policies, you would apply these funds, including, recording them as restricted, and then until qualifying expenses are incurred and identified. And then also reporting them as operating versus non-operating. And that's going to be according to your entity's policy. But the one that I would kind of lean towards right now is one that I found on the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. It's still non-authoritative, but this is guidance that was belonging to their not-for-profit section. And so it's section exclusive. And so they also have two ways to record this. And the first one is to record the funds as a loan. So you just record a note payable. This is year one, because probably no one got it, no one received the funds in year one and got them forgiven as well. So you initially record these as a note payable. And then when the loan obligation is legally released, then you reclassify it to your statement of activities as loan forgiveness income. Now, a portion of that loan is not forgiven. It stays on your books as a note payable, and then you're required to repay any remaining balance plus interest. The second way is to record them as grants. So again, here is diversity in practice again. And in this case, you will record the grant initially as a refundable advance. So it's still a liability on your statement of financial position. Then when it's, so refundable advance, and then you record grant revenue in accordance with guidance for conditional contributions. And so there's not a regular contribution. So conditional contributions have conditions. And so you recognize it as a grant revenue or contribution revenue once the measurable performance or other barriers and right of return no longer exists. So basically, once the conditions are met, then you can go ahead and recognize it as grant revenue or contribution revenue. So in that case, again, any refundable advance portion that is not recognized would be required to be paid back over time with interest. So you still leave that as a liability. So basically, record them as a loan, and then when the loan is forgiven or the conditions are met, then recognize it in your statement of activities. Now, they are non-taxable as far as cancellation of debt. Kind of non-taxable. First of all, let me just address the federal portion. And so when you have this debt canceled, a lot of questions could come up about how you report it on your 990. And it just says it's because it's supposed to be non-taxable on the federal level, then you do not have to worry about including it on a 990T. It is not unrelated business taxable income. It's statutorily excluded from that. And then for public charities, it still could count as public support. So that's the federal part. So that's good. So it's non-taxable. You can still deduct your expenses. Everything's good. And that mainly hits your for-profit entities, but just to let you know that. Then there was a hiccup that happened, I believe it was last year. I can't remember what months they were. It was like in November-ish or whatever. I guess the state legislature met and they tried to bring the state of Utah kind of in compliance or uniform with the federal decision about how to treat these loans. And then on December 27th, then President Trump decided made the decision or whatever that that expenses are deductible and so they're non-taxable. Well, the state of Utah didn't make that change. And so we found out last week on Wednesday, it was on the news about how the Paycheck Protection loans are going to be taxable for business entities. And the UACPA, the Utah Association of Certified Public Accountants, tried their best to lobby the legislature to have them be in conformity with the federal rules, which is normally how the state operates. And they are not budging. So businesses that have Paycheck Protection Program loans, PPP loans, are now going to be non-taxable for federal and taxable for state. So we're still trying to see how to approach that. I understand too that some people have some questions about the forgiveness of loans, and Mike is our expert on that. He's come up with a template that's going to help us and hopefully a lot of our clients and how to apply for this forgiveness, because it is so complicated.
Yeah.
He's been taking many courses, so if you have any questions, he's right here for it. You can ask him your questions. He knows the rules. He developed his own template, and then the AICPA had a template as well, and it's super confusing. But he put the same numbers into that template and came up with the same answer. So that's how good he is. So if you have any questions, let them come, and he'll be here to address those. And that's all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, while people are still thinking about their questions, are you willing to share that template with?
It wasn't really designed to be distributed to clients and stuff. It was more internally developed to help compute this for the millions of scenarios that you can come across. The AICPA one is available on their website, but it's very confusing. There's a lot of variables, and that's what makes this thing so complicated. Owner compensation is treated differently than employees that make over 100,000, which is different than employees that make less than 100,000. So there's so many variables. It's really hard to make it user-friendly. So I developed it to basically assist our clients in trying to compute the forgiveness calculation. But I didn't design it to be able to distribute it so that it would be able to be user-friendly.
But we can distribute. I can send the link for the AICPA one. That one has some more notes, that you can refer to for certain formulas. It's like, if it's a blue box, put it in here, It is something definitely they're going to have to talk with their accountant about. It's not easy. There are probably 10 different tabs, like put it in here and then first to this tab and then this tab goes to this tab. And I was looking at it, it was so confusing. But the forgiveness probably won't be as complicated for not-for-profits because you don't have owners. You don't have to worry about S corporations, that kind of thing, and having shareholders like we do in our company. But it's still the hard part is gonna be like your full-time equivalents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your full-time equivalents, your payroll calculations and that kind of thing. So I can definitely forward that to Kirsten, and then she can divvy that up and you can use it as a template. I mean, just to gather it. And just something else too that Mike ran into the other day, Zions Bank's template. Is it Zions Bank?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Zions Bank's template is not even ready yet. The forgiveness is like on hold for like 2 to 4 weeks because they keep changing the rules. So, and that's another part of the problem is a lot of people got these loans with one understanding, and then it keeps changing. They're like, oh, here's more clarification, and then it just gets more and more confusing, and so these calculations keep changing. So, but anyway, I will send out that link with the AICPA. It can give you a head start. It can tell you what you need. And then you can use that, maybe work in conjunction with the accountants. And I think that would be,
and I recommend working in conjunction with your accountant, because the instructions for PPP forgiveness are actually horrible. If you read through them, it talks on a very general level. It'll refer to, for instance, retirement plan benefits being a deductible item. But what the instructions don't say is that if you're an owner of greater than 5%, then you're limited to 2.5 divided by 12 times your 2019 contribution. But the instructions don't talk about that. You actually have to go into the interpretive sections of the Treasury's website to know this. So even if you read the instructions cover to cover, you would not really be able to fill the forgiveness out correctly. Does it matter? Probably not, because the time frame was extended so far that most people should have no problem in spending enough money to get forgiveness. But are the actual nuances correct? Probably not, unless you have your accountant involved.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, we just want to remind everyone that if you do have questions about forgiveness, UCA did do a webinar on this as well, and you can check that out on their website. It doesn't look like we have any questions as of yet, so I'm going to move on to our last section. And if we do get questions, we'll bring you back out, okay? Thanks so much, Tori. Also, Crystal, go right ahead. You said that you have something to say, and then we are going to invite Felicia Baca on to do a quick grants update.
Sorry, hang on. Let me do this. That'll turn that off in the background. I'm listening to a committee meeting in the background. We do have trainings, and if you do not have an accountant, which many of our smaller organizations do not, my staff and I are super happy to help you figure out what you need to figure out on forgiveness. If you go on our website under recordings and trainings is where you can see some of the past recordings from those trainings. There's also the one on forgiveness specifically has a spreadsheet where it's really easy to pop in your information and see what documents are required to submit with your application. So we all live to serve. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for that update. We appreciate it. Okay, with that, we'd like to introduce Felicia Baca, who will give us a quick update on some grants coming up.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here. I just wanted to give you an update, and I think that our administrator will drop links in the chat for these, but I can also do it. At the Salt Lake City Arts Council, we have 2 new grant categories this year, and the deadline for both of these is February 23rd at 5 p.m. The first is a racial equity and inclusion grant for organizations, so 501c3 organizations. And this is really intended to cultivate and create more consistent efforts toward racial equity in our community, justice, and inclusion in the arts and culture sector. So you must have a mission or a project related to arts and cultural activities that benefit Salt Lake City. And the second is an individual artist career empowerment grant. And these are for artists based in Salt Lake City, 18 years and over, and really designed to bolster the economy and support the artistic practices of our artists through a variety of means. So you can go to saltlakearts.org for that. And really quick, we have 2 job opportunities open within Salt Lake City. The first is for a public art program manager with the Salt Lake City Arts Council, and the deadline for that is February 19th. And the second job is for a deputy director of economic development in Salt Lake City. We are housed within the Department of Economic Development, and so that position will close February 18th. And that's it from us at the Arts Council. Thanks so much, everybody, for your time here.
Thank you, Felicia. We appreciate you coming and saying hello and giving us a quick update. Well, that is the end of our cultural call. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Our next cultural call will be on March 8th at 3:30. And you can find this recording on Utah Arts and Museum's YouTube page. And we encourage you to share it out to anyone who you think could use this information. Thank you again so much for joining us, and thank you to all of our presenters. Have a good day. Bye-bye.